Here I have the new, well, relatively new head brewer at Thwaites, Brian Jordan. Brian, thanks very much for giving me some of your time. You're a very busy man. You've set up here November, I think it was, last year. How's it all going?
Well, I'm going to correct you a little bit. It's going very well, but I'm going to correct you on two things. We are no longer the Crafty Dan Brewery, but we are Thwaites Brewery.
Right.
So that's number one. And my surname is Yorston, but everyone gets it wrong. So I'll let you off with that one.
Well, we won't do a second take because I think that just adds to the flavour of the production, Brian. But thanks, as I said, for giving me some of your time. You settled in okay?
Yeah, I've settled in very well. I have a very good team of brewers. I've got four really well qualified brewers who are really very, very enthusiastic. So that makes my job relatively easy. I'm a bit of a father figure, so all I have to do is, like any father, is just prod them in the right direction and on the go and just get on with it. So I'm quite in an enviable situation with them.
11 years as head brewer at Wadworth. Obviously many happy days down there in the Devizes. Just tell me one or two things about the period of time that you were down there.
Interesting. I've not only just had 11 years in Devizes, but I've brewed all over the country. 15 years at Vaux, 4 years at Ushers of Trowbridge. That's why I was working down there, living down in the West Country. Then when Ushers closed, spent 4 years at Shepherd Neame, which is really very interesting company to work for. Then worked at Wadworth, so I wanted to move back to near the family. Interesting times at Wadworth, in particular. At the beginning it was great. I had the opportunity to build a new brew house, which was £2.5 million project, which was fantastic, and we were able to, as a team, to put together what was a fantastic project in terms of design and the look of it. But then, just as that happened, the recession occurred and the brewing industry went through all sorts of difficult changes, particularly family brewers, and Thwaites is a good example of that, to be honest, and I understand what's gone on at Thwaites perfectly because it's been more or less mirrored in Devizes. So there was a period of sort of rationalisation, and those things went on for a good few years, and finally accumulated. It was exactly 2 years ago, and was tasked by the board to make further savings, and we put together a way of changing the organisation at Wadworth, and I knew at that time that they'd rationalise management, and being a Northerner and wanting to return back to the north of England, I decided that it was time to move on and do something different.
So you're here in the centre of Blackburn at the Thwaites Brewery. You mentioned to me you're up to 23 different beers that you've rolled out so far this year. That's a pretty impressive figure because we're only in April.
Yeah, it is. It's quite mind-boggling. We did quite a few when I was at Wadworth, but to think Thwaites surpasses that in terms of what we brew. It's just so difficult to keep track of them all. So if you ask us any questions on specific brews, I'm going to have to go to the piece of paper. In fact, one of my first jobs to arrive at Thwaites was to simplify things. Very much the brewery was set up for a large brewery organisation, and some of the paperwork was quite difficult to understand the recipes. So hopefully I've simplified the recipes so we can be more flexible in terms of developing brews and still keeping the same standards.
Yeah, 23 brews, as I mentioned. A really good range has been produced down here at Thwaites Brewery, and I've noticed that you've got one recently, your own signature, so to speak, the mild that you've just had on at 3.6. I've just had a taste before it's been rolled out. Do you feel that the mild beers are perhaps being shunted a little to one side as the more hoppier, lighter, fruitier beers are becoming more prominent on our palate?
Yes, they have. It's been very, very difficult to keep mild as a beer going. I know we have Nutty Black, which is a type of mild, and that's great to keep going. But particularly milds has always been difficult to keep going. You get one or two people who like milds, but but it's only 1 or 2 people. And when you work for a larger brewery, it's very difficult to keep miles going. In fact, I'll give you an example of that. We had a particularly good pub in Devizes, and we brewed our last batch of mild. There was only 10 firkins,
Yep.
and he kept that mild going, and we couldn't believe it for 6 months after we brewed it. And we kept going back to the pub and seeing how it was holding up. But we were such a good cellarman that he kept that mild going, but after that we had to call it a day.
Yes, salesmanship is of the essence.
Yes,
Surely
absolutely.
agree there,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. 23 brews, as I said. Do you have a particular favourite? Is it a favourite kind of beer? Maybe a bit of an unfair question. Is it a dark beer? Is it a light beer? Is it more of an amber, a more traditional bitter style beer? What's your favourite?
I'm a bit of an old fogey. I prefer traditional beers. I mean, I like some of the hoppy beers, and some of the hops are fantastic. I've seen that come through very much in the last 10 years, perhaps or more. And it's great. We've got so many musical instruments to play with on the palate, which is fantastic. But beer is to be drunk, to be enjoyed. Its primary aim is to quench your thirst. Some of the stronger, hoppier beers might be fantastic to drink in terms of flavour, but you wouldn't go back for a second or a third. I prefer, the nice pale ales. I've just worked on the recipe this morning. It's not a million miles from a pale ale I was brewing a year ago, but that's my type of beer. It's a pale ale which is amber in colour, but lightly hopped, lightly bittered, and that's my favourite because you can go back for more. This word moreish comes to...
It's striking, happy, but balanced, Brian, I think you'll agree. It's like a customer coming to a pub and may prefer to see maybe 2 or 3 quality beers that he can always rely on, which he knows are on the bar, rather than 6 rotating beers. You go in a lot of pubs where they'll both have 6, maybe have 8 rotating beers. But I've spoken to a lot of people who say, I just like to go into a pub and have a couple of beers that are on all the time instead of perhaps the rotating factor.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll use an analogy. I've used this analogy before, but some of these hoppier beers are like a curry. I mean, most of us like curries, but you wouldn't have a curry every night.
No.
But you'd have a curry every so often. I mean, you're still with your fish and chips, or your Lancashire hot pot, or your I don't know, standard meal.
Fish and chips.
Fish and chips is a good example.
Yeah.
And that's how I see it as a good analogy between some of the hoppier beers and some of the traditional beers.
Just perhaps leading on to that, with lots of people now with the food and beer matching. I've just mentioned fish and chips, and I've always thought a nice traditional bitter, which you're obviously fond of, would go perfectly with fish and chips.
Yeah,
but you do see a lot now of the food and matching. I think it's good for the industry that people can now go into a pub and maybe match with a meal a beer as opposed to a glass of wine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were doing this 15 years ago at Shepherd Neame, and it's continued, and they were one of the pioneers in terms of food and drink, and we did a lot of that. It is great to match food and drink, but in the end, beer is to be savoured, to be drunk, to cleanse the palate, or to wash down the food.
I had an idea that you would say that towards the end of that question, Brian. So forward, on we go here at Thwaites Brewery in Blackburn. So what have you got planned as regards the next couple of beers? Maybe am I prying a little bit, or is it, you tend to be a little bit more secretive?
It's not secretive. I'm just trying to remember. After 23
put you on the spot there. I do apologise.
Yeah, we've got a plan. I mean, the way we operate is we have the 2 regulars, TBC and
that's a very
Nutty
popular
Black, and they're brewed. TBC certainly is brewed every week without failure. Nutty Black is once every 2 or 3 weeks. Then we have the seasonal ones, and what we're finding is I've been pleasantly surprised as a head brewer here how well they've been accepted in our own pubs, and people enjoy the change and enjoy these different flavours.
Yeah.
And the problem we've had is actually satisfying all of our customers in terms of that. Some have been a little bit disappointed, and particularly when it comes to a celebration ale. Last week we had the Queen's 90th birthday. We produced a beer called 90 Years Young.
Yeah.
And we had a few complaints from one or two pubs who were a little bit slow, and we sold out. But we can't magic up a beer just like that. It has to be made for an event. So, and we've warned our customers, if it is a popular event, go and pre-order it, and we'll make it for you.
Sometimes it's nice to be a victim of your own success. Yeah, to a degree. I'm down here, of course.
Our success, not my success.
I'm down here, of course, to the Magoo's Brew is on its third tour. Should I say? Or it's its third brew. The first two were massively successful. I was really suited about how well received the Magoo's Brew was. The third brew, as I said, is. Well, it's past the boiling stage now. That will be available in a couple of weeks, and I can't wait for you to give it the thumbs up, hopefully.
Yeah, it should be a cracking beer in terms of just the hops they're using two fantastic hops in the right stage, and hopefully we'll have a really well balanced, hoppy, peachy sort of.
It's nice, yeah. Peachy.
I've never tried it before, but just knowing what hops go into it, I know exactly what it's going to taste like.
Yeah, the peachy and I think the passion fruit came through on the aroma and the flavour.
Yeah.
It's very refreshing. It's a nice crisp beer, nicely pitched. It's about, I think it's 4.3%, so it'll be a nice flavoursome